And I'm a big rooter for CNN, but that tells you a lot, doesn't it? I mean, how do you guys think you are doing this in that arena of like, this is a terribly divided country. We're not only politicized, a lot of people just hate the other side. And CNN, in my view, should be the place where both sides can watch. How do you think you're doing with that?
CNN is the place where both sides can watch. And I think, my show is evidence of that. We have lawmakers on from both parties. We'll have Elizabeth Warren on one night. We'll have Ted Cruz on another night. I think lawmakers from both parties should take questions, and you should push both of them.
Bill Maher did it again. Kaitlan Collins, CNN's so-called voice of reason, strolled straight into the lion's den, and shocker, she got absolutely torn apart. M didn't just call her out for her woke agenda and political bias, he dismantled it piece by piece, leaving her grasping for anything that could pass as a comeback. It was savage, it was hilarious. And let's be honest, it was long overdue. If you thought Ma had hung up his gloves on media hypocrisy, think again. This one, a total masterclass. It all kicked off with this quick clip right here.
On the freeze in federal funding, who advised the president on the legality of telling government agencies that they don't have to spend money that was already appropriated by Congress?
Well, as the OMB memo states, this is certainly within the confines of the law. So White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Bill Maher has had it with the left's meltdown over Kaitlan Leavitt ever since she took on the role of White House press secretary. The attacks have been non-stop, from the cackling panel on The View to the usual suspects in the press corps, like Jim Aosta and Kaitlan Collins, their entire strategy, corner her with gotcha questions, and pray she trips up. Case in point, that clip you just watched. Kaitlan grilled her on Trump's decision to fire a few prosecutors, a move well within his authority. She knew it, we knew it, but she asked anyway, hoping Caroline would falter. Spoiler alert. Caroline didn't. She fired back with a sharp, non-nonsense response. But Kaitlan wasn't ready to quit, desperate to trap her. She doubled down, and that's when everything started to unravel.
Okay, so they disagree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
And on what happened on Friday night, the administration fired several inspectors general without giving Congress the 30-day legally required notification that they were being fired. I think only 2 were left at DHS and the DOJ. And then yesterday we saw several prosecutors, I believe 12, fired from the Justice Department who worked on the investigations into the president. As you know, they are career prosecutors, therefore they are afforded civil service protections. How is the administration deciding which laws to follow and which ones to ignore?
Kaitlan Leavitt is about to deliver a flawless response, leaving no doubt about who charged and setting the record straight with confidence.
So it is the belief of this White House or the White House counsel's office that the president was within his executive authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive branch, and therefore he has the power to fire anyone within the executive branch that he wishes to. There's also a case that went before the Supreme Court in 2020, Scala Law LLC versus the Customs, Bureau Protection. I would advise you to look at that case, and that's the legality that this White House was resting on.
So can you see why Bill Maher was fired up? He couldn't stand the blatant hypocrisy from the left, so he went after them like a wrecking ball on a tear. But before we dive into that, let's take a look at Kaitlan Collins doing what she does. Best firing off rapid-fire questions, throwing in loaded statements, and that signature smug gotcha tone. It's the same old playbook confused corner. Conquer. But Kaitlan Leavitt, she wasn't falling for it. She saw it coming from miles away. Because at the heart of all Kaitlan's word salad, her entire point boiled down to one simple question. Was it legal for Trump to fire DOJ prosecutors? And she didn't just answer it, she obliterated the narrative. It was legal, it is legal, it's called executive authority, and Trump exercised it, end of story. But here's where it gets really funny. Kaitlan just couldn't take the hint. She doubled down, rambling on about norms, ethics, and the bigger picture, as if legal facts give a damn about feelings. Meanwhile, Leavitt stood there cool, calm, and collected, delivering a masterclass in how to destroy woke narratives with nothing but the truth.
Delivering a masterclass in how to destroy woke narratives with nothing but the truth.
You're confident that if they bring lawsuits against you, those prosecutors who were fired, that they will succeed?
We will win in court.
And did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation in the election interference investigation?
This was a memo that went out by the Presidential Personnel Office, and the president is the leader of this White House, so yes.
Caroline Litt's composure and sharp intellect are absolutely next level, while Kaitlan Collins fired off one tangled question after another, each more convoluted than the last. Levitt didn't so much as flinch, she didn't bite on the bait, didn't get caught up in the word games instead. She sliced through the noise like a hot knife through butter, cutting right to the heart of the matter. No matter how Kaitlan tried to twist it, whether with moral posturing, legal gymnastics, or feigned concern, Levitt stayed cool and kept delivering the same answer, just rewrapped in different packaging. It was legal for Trump to fire the prosecutors. Simple as that. But here's where it gets really interesting. Levitt didn't just answer the questions, she exposed the game. Kaitlan wasn't after clarity, she was gunning for a soundbite, and Levitt, sharp as a tack, made sure the only soundbite worth playing was the truth. It was a masterclass in dismantling media bias with grace wit and rock-solid confidence idents. But Maher was done. He'd had enough of the unfair targeting of the young press secretary, so he stepped in first. He gave Kaitlan a taste of her own medicine, setting a trap of his own.
And I'm a big rooter for CNN, but that tells you a lot, doesn't it? I mean, how do you guys think you are doing this in that arena of like, this is a terribly divided country. We're not only politicized, a lot of people just hate the other side. And CNN, in my view, should be the place where both sides can watch. How do you think you're doing?
CNN loves to paint itself as the beacon of neutral, unbiased journalism. Just the facts, no agenda. But that image falls apart the moment you dig a little deeper. The truth is the network leans left, and not just by a little. It's embedded. In the narratives, they push the guests they choose. And of course, the questions they ask, they don't just report the news. They mold it, twist it, and spin it to fit a preferred narrative. Maher knows this all too well. So he decides to turn the tables and catch Kaitlan in the very same trap she tried to set for Caroline Levitt. Now sit back and watch her walk straight into Maher's trap. Kaitlan kicked things off with the usual PR spin, confidently claiming that CNN is a neutral network, a fair, balanced platform where voices from all sides, no matter their political leanings, are welcome to share their views to prove her point. She tossed out a couple of token examples. We've had Ted Cruz, we've had Elizabeth Warren, as if name-dropping a few high-profile guests somehow guarantees ideological balance. But here's the catch. Cherry-picking a couple of appearances doesn't undo the network's glaring left-leaning bias. It's like tossing a lone green grape into a bowl of red ones and calling it a fruit. Salad, sure, Cruz might get 5 minutes of airtime, but it's almost always with loaded questions, dismissive commentary, and a post-interview panel primed to fact-check anything that doesn't fit the script. Kaitlan's argument wasn't just weak, it was downright laughable, because if CNN really were neutral, she wouldn't need to name-drop those rare conservative guests like their collector's items. Kaitlan had just walked straight into Bill Maher's trap, and now watch him obliterate her.
I'm a conservative in America, and I'm watching CNN. Just for the straight middle of the road. That's what I hear for 15 minutes. It's great, and then Lonely Scott. It does look, and when you see the path, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSNBC, than to have this.
Maher's spot-on token appearances aren't a sign of an unbiased outlet. They're actually the exact opposite. He didn't just call it out, he shredded the argument, according to Maher, trotting out a conservative every now and then is worse than not having one at all. At least with an entirely left-leaning panel, viewers know exactly what they're getting, but pretending to be neutral while subtly pushing an agenda that's pure deception. And Maher didn't hold back. He slammed Kaitlan and CNN for pandering to the woke left while sidelining conservative voices. It's not about balance, it's all about optics. They want to look fair without actually being fair. Em even pointed out how when conservatives do make an appearance, they're often treated like villains in a bad script, interrupted, misquoted, and fact-checked on the spot. But here's the kicker. Em argued that CN's charade of neutrality doesn't just deceive, it actually fuels division. It's not just dishonest, it's downright dangerous. If you're going to lean left, own it, don't. Gaslight your audience into thinking they're hearing both sides when one side's mic is always turned down after Bill Maher's first shot across the bow. You'd think Kaitlan and her woke crew would dial back the attacks on Levitt, but nope, they cranked up the heat. Here's one of them trying to corner Levitt.
according to an IG report from the Social Security Administration, there was $71 billion worth of fraud in one single fiscal year that we know about. And so that is a lot of fraud, Peter.
To be clear, that $71 billion was from 2015 to 2022, so it wasn't in just one year, and it was
$71 billion.
But it wasn't in one year, just over multiple years, from 2015 to 2022.
So are you defending $71 billion in fraud, Peter? That's a lot of money. Why is the media so against cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from the government? I don't get
I
it.
just want to ask a question.
We won't be deterred. We will not be deterred from people like you and the press.
Levitt just dropped a bombshell the Trump administration had uncovered a jaw-dropping $71 billion in fraud and was ready to take it down. But here's where things got messy in what was likely a slip of the tongue. Caroline mentioned that the fraud was discovered within a single fiscal year that was all the woke press needed. They smelled blood and pounced circling like vultures, desperate to turn a small misstatement into their next gotcha moment. But Levitt, she didn't just dodge the trap. She flipped the whole script, calm, composed, and sharper than ever. She fired back with a question that left the press scrambling. Are you seriously trying to defend $71 billion in fraud committed against the American people? Silence. Awkward, uncomfortable silence. Because of course they weren't going to touch that one. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from a verbal slip to something far more uncomfortable. The media's real priorities Levitt had exposed the game. They weren't concerned about the fraud itself just protecting their narrative. It was a masterclass in how to turn media bias into a self-inflicted wound. But like a pack of hyenas, the woke press wasn't about to back off until they got their pound of flesh. So they staged a comeback.
That's something that wasn't true, which is, you said that they have found before that they believe there have been tens of millions of people who were receiving money who are dead on the Social Security list. The same report that you referred to said that
Peter,
none of those individuals are receiving.
Peter, did you watch the full clip of the interview that I did when I said that? And I said there are a lot of unanswered questions, and we suspect there could be tens of millions of people.
I'm saying the IG report.
So you just said what I said is not true. In fact, it was true. That's a suspicion that this administration had.
Another failed gotcha moment. A study case, the press desperate for a soundbite, tried to trap Levitt in a conveniently overlooking one key detail. They didn't have all the facts. Levitt had clearly stated there was suspicion of fraud within the Social Security system, with the possibility that some people were quietly benefiting from it. But of course, the woke reporters heard what they wanted to hear, that Levitt had outright claimed fraud was already proven. It's almost laughable. The woman literally said they were still investigating. But facts don't matter when the media's hunting for a scandal. They didn't want clarity, they wanted a headline, and Levitt, she wasn't having it. She calmly set the record straight, pointing out that her words had been twisted beyond recognition. And here's the best part. While the press was busy spinning their narrative, Levitt doubled down, hitting them with the real question, why are you more focused on misrepresenting my words than on the possibility of fraud affecting hardworking Americans' silence? Because when the facts don't fit the narrative, the outrage machine comes to a screeching halt as expected. This sent Bill Maher over the edge, and he didn't hold back. He tore into Kaitlan Collins and her woke colleagues.
I'm from Alabama. I'm from a very red state. I have a very conservative family, a lot of them who are Trump voters. They watch my show every night, and I think they know that they can trust me, that, you know, we call bullshit on every side, not just whatever leaning our audience may be. And I think that's something that people actually want more of.
Maher didn't just push back. He snapped. He made it crystal clear that coming from a deeply red state like Alabama had nothing to do with being unbiased. Geography doesn't define neutrality, integrity does. Maher laid it out. It's not about where you're from, it's about your commitment to honest reporting. Free from partisan spin and Kaitlan's desperate attempt to hide behind her roots. Hilarious. As for her Republican dad, Ma didn't hold back. They're watching CNN to support you, Kaitlan. Not because they believe for 1 second that CNN's unbiased, and honestly, who could blame them? Just because they're rooting for family doesn't mean they're buying the network spin. M drove the point home. Personal background doesn't erase bias, integrity, and writing. Does CNN's coverage speaks for itself? Selective framing, loaded questions, and an obvious leftward slant Kaitlan's. I'm from Alabama. Defense was nothing but smoke and mirrors, and Maher sliced right through it. because when the conversation moved from personal stories to real reporting patterns, it was game over. Kaitlan wasn't defending neutrality. She was defending the illusion of it. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt was having a field day taking apart the other woke reporters one by one.
I also want to thank you tonight, Sean, for fact-checking James Carville for the lies that he pushed on your program last week. Unfortunately, James represents the deranged and out-of-touch Democrat Party who continue to deny the reality that this country loves Donald Trump. And in fact, President Trump is enjoying his highest approval rating from the American people than he ever has, despite the years of lies, smears, and witch hunts by the Democrat Party. The Harvard-Harris poll today is incredible. When you look issue by issue, the vast majority of the American people support what President Trump is doing.
Karoline Leavitt remains utterly unfazed by the non-stop attacks from the legacy media. While they throw accusations and spin their narratives, she calmly FS back, delivering brutal takedown after brutal takedown, her latest target none other than James Carville, the self-styled political guru, who's made it his personal mission to drag Trump's popularity through the mud. But Leavitt isn't buying what Carville's selling to her. He's not offering any real analysis. He's running a full-blown smear campaign, desperately grasping at straws to keep the anti-Trump narrative alive. Carville's methods aren't about facts, they're about manufacturing outrage and feeding the echo chamber. And here's the kicker, Leavitt isn't just pushing back, she's exposing the hypocrisy. While Carville rants about Trump's supposed flaws, he conveniently overlooks the glaring failures within his own party. Leavitt calls it like it is. If Carville spent half as much time tackling real issues as he does, obsessing over Trump, maybe his party wouldn't be drowning in its own contradictions. Once again, Leavitt shows why the media can't stand her. She doesn't just win fights, she dismantles narratives and leaves her critics scrambling for cover. Meanwhile, woke. Reporters are getting the boot from their own media outlets, one of the latest victims, Joy Reid, who recently lost her show, and the mocking hasn't stopped, since here's one from Megyn Kelly.
Here's one from Megyn Kelly.
Big news, tonight will be Joy Reid's final show on MSNBC. Single tear, white woman tears happening right here, Joy. She was officially fired over the weekend because she's a racist, horrible news anchor with no ratings. And that's really been the truth for a long time. MSNBC's under new management, and I guess they decided to come to grips with reality.
Gradually, even the woke media outlets are starting to wake up to reality. The public isn't buying their progressive propaganda anymore, and now they're quietly purging the very people who championed it. Case in point, Joy Reid, her takes have been some of the most cringing-worthy in the history of political commentary. Remember when she claimed inflation was just a high-class problem, while everyday Americans were drowning in skyrocketing grocery and gas prices? Or when she shamelessly compared concerned parents at school board meetings to insurrectionists, as if standing up for your kids' education somehow made you a domestic threat. Cringe doesn't even begin to cover it now with Reid, reportedly. On the chopping block at MSNBC, it feels like a breath of fresh air for Trump supporters Leavitt and anyone sick of her relentless fact-free attacks for years. Reid made it her mission to drag Trump's name through the mud-pushing storylines that crumbled under the slightest scrutiny. Her firing doesn't just signal a shift at MSNBC, it's a win for common sense and a massive blow to the woke media machine. And speaking of a journalist feeling the full force of the Trump-Leavitt effect, enter Jim Acosta of CNN.
Enter Jim Acosta of CNN.
And I just wanted to end today's show by thanking all of the wonderful people who work behind the scenes at this network. You may have seen some reports about me and the show, and after giving all of this some careful consideration and weighing an alternative time slot CNN offered me, I've decided to move on. I am grateful to CNN for the nearly 18 years I've spent here doing the news.
Jim Acosta, the guy who practically built a career out of dragging Trump's name through the mud, just took a major fall from grace. After years of being front and center on daytime programming, CNN quietly shoved him into a late-night slot. Why simple everyone was fed up with his woke, self-righteous nonsense, the endless grandstanding, the performative outrage, and the constant look-at-me style of journalism, it had worn thin even for CNN's shrinking audience for Acosta. This wasn't just a schedule shift. It was a humiliating demotion, a clear sign that his brand of partisan theatrics had reached its expiration date, unable to handle the hit to his reputation. He did what any bruised ego would. He handed in his resignation. And honestly, who's surprised? Ayosta built his career not on reporting the facts, but on pushing narratives, turning press briefings into personal soapboxes. But once the ratings tanked and the woke bubble burst, CNN had no choice but to cut its losses. His resignation wasn't just about pride, it was about survival. Because without the Trump era to keep him relevant, Jim Ayosta became exactly what he charged his critics of being obsolete. Bill Maher isn't just calling out the woke media, he's tearing it down brick by brick. And here's the kicker, it's actually working. The tides are shifting and the resignations are starting to pile up first. It was Don Lemon, then Jim Ayosta, and now the whispers are starting about who's next. Maybe Kaitlan Collins. It's not. As far-fetched as it sounds, she's already been called out for her thinly veiled bias in softball interviews with left-leaning figures, all while treating conservatives like they're on trial if CNN keeps bleeding viewers and they are executives. May start asking if Kaitlan's brand of journalism is worth the baggage. Maher's war on woke media isn't just about winning debates, it's about shifting the culture. People are fed up with being lectured by self-righteous anchors pushing narratives instead of facts. And Maher, he's the unlikely general in this battle, exposing the hypocrisy. One brutal truth at a time. The woke media built their empire on arrogance, convinced they were untouchable, but now they're scrambling. Maher is just winning. The argument, he's winning the war. And if Kaitlan's smart, she might want to start updating her resume. And with that, we'll wrap up today's video. If you liked our hot take, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.